Just bite into that big old sandwich with that big juicy mush that might not be tuna. Did you hear about Subway? So they tested a bunch of the tuna in their tuna sandwiches, and they found that there was no tuna DNA to be found at all. So what the heck is it? So it's a new report that came out of the New York Times where they went out and they grabbed a bunch of tuna sandwiches from a few LA locations, and when they sent those DNA samples in from the tuna, there was no tuna to be found. So is Subway tuna like not even tuna? What is it? I mean, candidly, the stuff tastes delicious. I used to eat it all the time, but I do think that we could investigate this a little bit more. Hey, after this video, go ahead and check out Thrive Market down below in the description. If you want to get things that are going to be keto friendly, things that are going to work for paleo, vegan, whatever, they are an online membership-based grocery store. So go ahead and check them out. They're a big supporter of this channel. I put that link down below and you can save 25% off and get a free gift when you check them out. Plus, hey, you actually can buy tuna at Thrive Market too. So check them out. Again, big thank you to them for the support. Okay, so back in January, a class action lawsuit was started against Subway when a few people claimed, we don't think there's any tuna in your tuna sandwiches. Maybe the tuna just tastes so good it was hard to believe, right? It's kind of a bummer because Subway can't catch a break. I don't know if you remember a few years back, they got into this whole bread scandal, and the Ireland Supreme Court actually ruled that their bread cannot be considered bread because it was more than 10% sugar. And then you got the whole Jared thing. They just can't catch a break. I feel kind of bad for them because, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, point is here's what's going on. Okay, when you do PCR testing on like tuna or anything, what it basically does is it makes millions, sometimes even billions of copies of the DNA so that you can ultimately figure out, okay, what is the source of this? Like, what is the source of this food or whatever? Well, they couldn't find any tuna at all, but they also couldn't identify what it was. Okay, and that is kind of a clear indicator that it was probably because the tuna was so denatured after being cooked, but then also being mixed with mayonnaise, which can be acidic, then shipped across. The point is that once you cook something, it's going to alter the DNA. It's going to be harder to identify. Cooking like really messes stuff up. I'm not defending Subway in this particular case. I'm just saying we have to look at how this DNA testing goes, and I'm somewhat familiar with the process, so you just have to be a little bit careful there. The further that you harvest a fish from the bone, the harder it is to recognize the DNA. But where I think there could be a discrepancy, when you look at a lot of like the reports on this, they actually kind of line up with this too, is a lot of times the canneries and all that stuff, they'll throw some kind of malfeasance in there, right? So there was an investigation that was done back in like 2010 by Oceana that took a look at this specifically. They found that like canneries and all that can mislabel tuna 26 to 87% of the time. That's a pretty big delta between the two, but a lot of times it ends up being grouper, it ends up being cod, it ends up being snapper, things that are cheaper and easier than tuna in a lot of cases. But you know, in my honest like kind of health perspective, I would much rather have cod than tuna. But I think you would notice the effect. Tuna would be a completely different consistency than cod and a completely different consistency from grouper, but I'll take cod any day over tuna, even though it's a little bit cheaper. People, I don't know, you just don't go to Subway asking for a cod sandwich. But the point is their tuna is pretty odd, right? It's a different consistency, it's very pulverized, it's very delicious. But I think there's a bigger problem with Subway tuna than the actual mysterious tuna. I personally don't believe that they are trying to put fake tuna in there. Like, I think that tuna is a relatively inexpensive food, and I feel like it would be too easy to open up for scrutiny. I think that it's a mistake more so on the cannery side. That doesn't mean go out and eat it, because I think the bigger culprit here is probably going to be the soybean oil in the mayonnaise. How much mayonnaise is in the tuna salad that is in a tuna sandwich from Subway is ridiculous. And that is a huge amount of polyunsaturated fatty acids, and that's enough reason to not get the tuna sandwich. Because I don't think that we're dealing with soy or like some kind of weird thing in the tuna. If anything, it's another fish that's been mislabeled. In the grand scheme of things, tuna is pretty far up the food chain, making it very high in mercury, and you're probably better off if you're eating it frequently to eat a different kind of fish anyway. So who cares if it's cod or grouper? It's probably better for you, but the mayonnaise, that issue still stands. So I don't know, it's kind of funny, but we have to look at this whole thing unfold and see what happens out of it. I just feel bad they can't catch a break. Poor Subway. I'll see you tomorrow.